Guys, we did it. Football is finally back, and I'm reacting to the Thursday night football game. Plus, I'll be going over all the matchups and my starts and sits for week one coming right up. What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gridiron Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Friday, September 11th, 2020. And of course, I am Chip. I'm your host, and thank you so much for listening today. If you're a new listener, thank you so much for joining us as well. Please share this podcast. You can find us over on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. If you'd like to watch us, you can watch over on YouTube at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So please don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Today we are talking about the week one matchups. We're talking about my start sits of the week. But first, we're going to go over the Thursday night football game. And guys, how great was it to watch football last night? I mean, the game was okay. I wouldn't say the game was the best, but we have NFL football back, and it's exciting. It was actually kind of cool to see there were fans in the stadium. I didn't know how I was going to really like that. I mean, for the sense of like not seeing a full stadium filled with fans. But based on what they said last night, they had about 15,000 fans in the stadium. So I'm just glad that there were some fans be able to enjoy the opening night of the football season. But, looking at the game last night and kind of critiquing the game, I mean, we saw two different teams out there. We got one team that looks well coached, ready to play, dominated, and one team that just didn't look like they were in sync at all. Looks like the Texans really need to get a little more, games under their belt to kind of get things going. But, from the standpoint of last night, the Chiefs, I mean, they looked awesome. I mean, scored 31, over 30 points and all that stuff. And the fact of the matter is, I mean, they just look good. I mean, Mahomes looked great. He had 3 touchdowns last night. Travis Kelce, he only had the 1 touchdown. He didn't really do a lot for you last night. I mean, he had 50 yards receiving. He had 6 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. So if you play in a PPR league, that's going to be obviously a good game for you. But Sammy Watkins, why does Sammy Watkins love the first week of the season? He blew up last year in the first week. He had a great game last night. He was one, if you listen to the podcast I did the other day, Sammy Watkins was one of those boom bust players for me. You just don't know what you're getting out of him. And the fact of the matter is, he looked great last night. But unfortunately, this is what he does. I mean, last year he was the number 1 receiver in the first couple of weeks of the season. And then you look at this year, he had a great week 1. And if you played him, great. I think that he was a great play if you needed that upside, because he's a guy that could blow up. He's a talented player, and he's going to have those weeks. But, it's one of those things where you just don't know what you're getting out of him. And the same thing with Mecole Hardman. I mean, he's another boom-bust player. He didn't really have a good game last night, but one play could save your fantasy week. So, Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked great. He had 25 rushes for 138 yards and a touchdown. He looked great in open space. I mean, when he scored his 27-yard rushing touchdown, he made that cutback to get into open field. I mean, dude looks good in open field, running. But I saw a little bit of a struggle on the goal line carries and short yardage, that he did not look like he can push that pile forward. He lost yardage, and I think that could be in concern. I think that where, what Kareem Hunt was good at, Damian Williams was okay at that. But I mean, if you're going to be the number 1 running back for the Kansas City Chiefs and be the all-purpose back and never come off the field, you have to get those short yardage gains. And it doesn't look like he was getting that last night. So I hope that's something that you can fix. I'm going forward with the season. But overall, I liked how Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked. It was always concerning for me during the offseason to draft somebody so high and not really sure on how he was going to perform. And with the 25, touches he got, running the ball last night, tells me that he is the number 1 back. He's not going to come off the field, and he is their workhorse. But he just needs to clean up, try and get some of that short yardage gain. So with that, with receiving as well, Tyreek Hill, he had a kind of a quiet game until he scored a touchdown. He had 5 receptions for 46 yards and a touchdown. Pretty quiet game. But if you're in a PPR league, he at least saved your week in a sense by getting that touchdown. But he's a guy that's always going to get the extra attention because he's such a fast guy. He can score at any moment. But I think the one guy that actually I thought did decent last night was Will Fuller. I think Will Fuller, we know he's talented. He's a former first round pick. He had 8 receptions for 112 yards. Now, I think that this is encouraging for people who are Will Fuller owners, but it's the whole Houston team just did not look good. Deshaun Watson really didn't have a good game until later. He had some garbage time touchdowns and then some yardage there. So he did have 253 yards and a passing touchdown with a rushing touchdown. But if the Chiefs were wanting to not have them score, I think they could have done that. But Deshaun Watson, this was the concern for me. This is why I had him ranked low this year going into the offseason or going into the season. And then I actually had him as a player to avoid. I just don't know how he's going to do without DeAndre Hopkins. And last night, that team, it could have just been a coincidence. That team wasn't ready to play. And obviously losing somebody like DeAndre Hopkins, it showed last night. But I think that, it's one of those things where he's an elite player, right? And we need to see him take over games and actually make Will Fuller, Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks, make them better receivers, throw them open, do the things that he needs to do to show that he doesn't need DeAndre Hopkins. But it looked like they missed him last night. And obviously, David Johnson, he didn't have a bad game. He had 11 rushes for 77 yards and a touchdown. He looked decent, but it's one of those things where he's kind of a wild card. David Johnson, I love him as the player. I think he's a great player, but we just don't know how he's going to be in that offense. But he definitely had enough, workload last night where he had almost 20 points of PPR fantasy points. So obviously that's not a bad game for him. That's pretty good. I'll take that all week long, or every week if I can get 20 points out of David Johnson. That's something he shouldn't be upset about if you play David Johnson. And honestly, if you own David Johnson, you had to play him because he's probably your RB1 or your RB2. So with that being said, it was great to have the season back on its way. It's one of those things where we were concerned if the season was even going to happen. It finally did, and now we can just get excited about the rest of the Week 1 matchups. And before we get into all the matchups, I'm going to get into some of the news very briefly. This is an important piece of news that you have to pay attention to. If you're living on the West Coast, I live in the Seattle area, and there's been fires going on in Oregon and Northern California, and the air quality right now is awful. You cannot walk outside without smelling a bunch of smoke. All day long today in Washington, there's smoke everywhere. You can smell it. It's just, the air quality is awful. So apparently the air quality in Santa Clara, where the San Francisco 49ers play, is become to the point where they may have to postpone the game against the Cardinals on Sunday. So if this happens, you have to adjust your lineups. So that means Kyler Murray, that means DeAndre Hopkins, Kenyon Drake, all these players may not play this weekend if the air quality continues to get worse. It's been getting worse here in Washington, so my guess is that it could continue to get worse in California where the 49ers play. So really pay attention to that. Look for updates, everything you can to see if that game is going to be postponed and whatnot. So going on to the Eagles. The Eagles wide receiver Jalen Reagor, the rookie, was a full participant in practice today. So we knew that he was limited. We didn't know if he was going to start the season on time. The fact of the matter is that he's off the injury report. He's a full practice. He had full participant in practice today. So he's a guy that we talk about a little bit later on how I look at it this week. But it's good that he's now going to play and start his rookie season on time. And then in Buffalo, reports are coming out that they may use Zach Moss a lot because he's a good in-between the tackle type of runner against the Jets. This was something I was concerned about drafting Devin Singletary this year. I grabbed Zach Moss anywhere I could. I just have a hunch that he is going to be the starter kind of, not right away, but I think if they continue to hype him up like he is, and all the things I've been hearing is that Zach Moss has been doing everything right this offseason and during training camp. And the fact that there's more reports coming out that they could get a good workload because he's a better between the tackle runner, I don't know. I think I'm pivoting towards Zach Moss more, and I'm lucky to own him in Dynasty in a couple of my leagues, but it's just something to pay attention to because everyone thinks Devin Singletary is a starter. I think he has the opportunity. I think it's his job to lose. I think that he should get the first opportunity to show that he can be that starter. But there's just more reports coming out that Zach Moss is getting, he could get more looks in the game this week. So definitely want to pay attention to that. And more running back news: the Jaguars offensive coordinator Jay Gruden confirmed that James Robinson is the starter going into Week 1, and that he could handle the full workload. Now, if you're desperate for a running back and you have somebody who's injured, or you're just not sure if you play in deeper leagues, James Robinson is a guy that you could start and plug and play if needed. I have him in one of my main leagues. He's on my bench. I may have to play him if Miles Sanders doesn't play. If I need to fill in a flex position or another running back position, and hopefully have some upside, because you want a guy who gets the touches and the workload. The opportunities need to be there for you to feel comfortable starting a running back like that. And he's unknown. We have no idea how good he is. But like I said, if you're in a pinch, you need someone to plug in. It looks like James Robinson's the guy to play. Now, granted, the Jags offense isn't very good. Scoring opportunities may not be there, but unfortunately, if you're grasping for straws, you need somebody to plug and play. James Robinson's a good guy to put in there if the workload's there, and it looks like it will be. So that being said, I'm gonna go right into my matchups. I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can because I want to get all the information I can to you guys. I'm gonna start just going through the list. The first game on the list is the Seattle Seahawks at the Atlanta Falcons. The Seahawks are favored by 1. The over/under is a 49. I don't think that's a hard thing. I'm taking the Falcons in this game. I like the Falcons more. I think the Falcons have a great offense. I think they're very well balanced. But when it comes to fantasy purposes, I think the must starts for this game obviously is Russell Wilson. You got Matt Ryan, Chris Carson. I think Todd Gurley's a start. Julio Jones, obviously Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. Now, going into the season, in the first week, these names will be changed as the season progresses because we know exactly how they'll be used, the snap counts, just the stats in general. It's very hard to determine who to start, who to sit in the first week. We just don't know. So most of these players I'm talking about, like especially quarterbacks, I'm only going to talk about the guys I feel like I'm going to start when you're playing in a 1 quarterback league. If you're in a 2 quarterback league like I am, some of these guys on your list you're going to have to play because they're your second quarterback. But I think these are guys that you could start this week and hopefully benefit from it, because like I said, we don't know exactly how it's going to play out this week or throughout the first few weeks. The first few weeks are the hardest weeks to project who you must start, who you should sit, and who you should have as flex options. But for this game, I really do think Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Chris Carson, Todd Gurley, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf are guys that you can put in your lineup and not feel bad about. I don't really have any flex options for this week, for this game. Now, my 2 boom and bust players for this week, I have Hayden Hurst and Carlos Hyde. Hayden Hurst has a lot of upside just based on he's in the Falcons offense. You're assuming that he's going to take the role that Austin Hooper had. That's what I'm assuming. I have to play Hayden Hurst because he's my only tight end on my roster. But he's a guy that I think could have a productive game. And then also Carlos Hyde. There's a report that came out today that, they're going to use the hot hand between Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde. My assumption is they're going to obviously play Chris Carson, but if you really need another plug and play player in a flex or in a deeper league, Carlos Hyde could be a potential guy that you can play and hopefully get some fancy points out of. But for that being said, I think I think those are my players that you go with this week in this game. And moving on to the New York Jets and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are favored by 5.5 points. If the over/under is 40, so a pretty low over/under. I think the only must start in this game is Josh Allen. He's a guy that he was the top 12 quarterback in the drafts, and I think that he's really the only player that you really can play and plug into your lineup and as a must start. My flex options for this week for this game is Devin Singletary, Le'Veon Bell, and Stephon Diggs. I'm a little reluctant with the whole Devin Singletary thing just because Zach Moss would get more playing time. But right now, he's the starter. Until I see that Zach Moss actually takes that role, I think Devin Singletary is a good flex play. Now, for my boom bust, I think Zach Moss is a boom bust. If you're going to believe in the hype of what's going on in this offense and during training camp, then you may have to play Zach Moss. I think John Brown's an interesting player to play. He had a good season last year. And with Stephon Diggs, now that they're on the roster, does that open up John Brown a little bit more? That could have a potential big game. And another sleeper of mine in our boom bust category is Chris Herndon. We know that Sam Darnold loves going to Chris Herndon when he's playing. I think that's his safety route, that go-to guy. So I think Chris Herndon's a good boom bust if you need a tight end that you need to plug and play, because obviously if you're in deeper leagues or if you have an injury to a tight end and you don't have another tight end on your roster, Chris Herndon could be a guy that you could play to hopefully get a good game out of. And for my sit, I'm sitting Sam Darnold. Most of these players that I'm going to put on my sit for the week are guys that you didn't draft in the top 12. Obviously, if you're, in a 12-team, fantasy football league, you got a good quarterback you're going to play. I don't think Sam Darnold's a guy that you need to play. I have him in a 2-quarterback league, and he's my bench, quarterback. So I'm not playing him. I want to see more out of Sam Darnold. I think he has the intangibles to be a really good quarterback. I want to wait and see what happens, with that Jets offense. Now going on to the Las Vegas Raiders and the Carolina Panthers game. Right now, this is a push. There's nothing, here that's favoring either team. The over-under is 46.5. So it's a decent game that Vegas has them at. But, for my must-starts, it's pretty obvious. Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, Christian McCaffrey, and DJ Moore are the must-starts. Not really any flex options that I have in this game. But the boom-bust players I have are Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, and Derek Carr. The matchup is good for Derek Carr. But like I say, if you're in a 1-quarterback league, you're not playing him. But he's a guy that if you have an injury or somebody who's not able to play, Derek Carr is a fine option to kind of stream this week. But I personally wouldn't play him, but I understand if you have to, if you're in a deeper league. And I'm not playing Teddy Bridgewater this week. I don't know what he's going to look like as a full-time starter again. I know we saw a little sample size last year when he was on the Saints, but that was the Saints offense. He had all the weapons he needed. Now with the Panthers, other than Christian McCaffrey and DJ Moore, I just don't know how this offense, Matt Rule is a new coach. I don't know how this offense is going to look. So I'm not willing to start Teddy Bridgewater when I don't know exactly what the offense will look like. So for that being said, let's go on to the Chicago Bears against the Detroit Lions. Now the Detroit Lions are favored by 1.5 points. The over-under is 44.0. The must start. I think Matthew Stafford's a must start. Allen Robinson's a must start. Now, Marvin Jones becomes a must start because Kenny Galladay is doubtful for Sunday. If Kenny Galladay is not going to play, which it looks like he's not, Marvin Jones is a must start. You have to play him. He's a great option. When it comes to a flex option, I think Tyreek Cohen is a good flex option. It doesn't look like David Montgomery is healthy right now. So Cohen looks like a guy that you can plug in, especially in a PPR format, as a flex option. Now, my boom bust players for this week on this game, DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson, because we don't know who's going to get more snaps. DeAndre Swift has been injured. Kerryon Johnson's the vet that's been on that team. And who knows how they're going to distribute the ball. But I think that you have to be very careful on who you plug in, just because I know it's nice to start DeAndre Swift because he's a rookie. He's a talented rookie. But we haven't seen anything out of him yet. And he's been injured. So I would be careful starting him if you had to. And then TJ Hawkinson, I think, with Kenny Galladay being out, I think TJ Hawkinson becomes a good option along with Marvin Jones. So if you need to play him, I would play him in your tight end position if you need to. And then Anthony Miller, he's a kind of a sneaky guy that you can put in your lineup there if you're in the PPR league, because he came on last season really well, and then it with him emerging, it really helped Allen Robinson as well. So I think that Anthony Miller could be a good option as well. And obviously you're sitting Kenny Galladay. He's doubtful. So he's not. It looks like he's not going to play with that hamstring injury. So don't sit Kenny Galladay. Don't start Kenny Galladay, even if somehow he miraculously is going to play this week. Never play guys who are coming off a hamstring injury, because you have no idea if he's going to be out there as a decoy, if he's going to get you any points at all. I'd rather sit Kenny Galladay. So if he is active for Sunday, I would strongly consider benching him, because you have no have any idea on how many snaps he will play. So just don't risk it. Don't get mad at yourself for starting somebody who was playing and active when he's dealing with the injury. So going down next to the Indianapolis Colts versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Colts are favored by 7.5 points. The over/under is 46. I think the must start in this game is DJ Chark. I think he's the only guy that you need to start, because he's a guy that you picked up, and he's a guy that you may have as your wide receiver one. If you draft a DJ Chark, you're going to start him. You're not going to bench him for anybody else, unless you went wide receiver heavy in your draft. But DJ Chark, to me, is the only must start player on this game. Now, my flex options, I do think Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack, again, running back by committee, just like the Lions. You just don't know what you're getting out of these running backs and how they're going to distribute the ball. But I understand why you have to play someone like Jonathan Taylor or Marlon Mack. But we just don't know which one that is going to be the starter. We don't know which one is going to get the most snaps. We don't know how that's going to play out. So be careful with these guys, because just like DeAndre Swift, we don't know what his role is going to be. But I think that there's upside there with Jonathan Taylor. But I would rather try to pivot somewhere else if I need to. But obviously, if you drafted Jonathan Taylor, you need him there as a starter. But my boom bust players for this game is James Robinson, Jack Doyle, and T.Y. Hilton. You know, like I said earlier, James Robinson apparently is going to get the start for the Jags. He's going to get the workload. We don't know how that's going to play out. We have no idea how this game is going to play out. But I think Jack Doyle is an interesting pick only because Philip Rivers loves throwing to the tight end. And I think Jack Doyle, we've seen Jack Doyle do very well in the years that he's been in the league. And now having somebody who's favoring the tight end like Philip Rivers, I think Jack Doyle has a good game. Now, T.Y. Hilton, I only say him as a boom bust only because he's dealing with a hamstring injury. I don't want to play somebody who is injured, but T.Y. Hilton is one of those guys who got a very big game for you, or he does nothing for you. So that's why he's in that category. And honestly, my two sits of the week is Philip Rivers and Gardner Minshew. I don't really, think that you drafted anybody that's ranked anywhere near him or those two guys. I think anybody on your roster is better than these two options. So I would pivot and not play Rivers or Gardner Minshew this week. And like I said, unless you're in a 2-quarterback league, then you're playing them. But for that being said, this game is going to be interesting. I think I like the Colts in this game. I love Philip Rivers. I want to see what he does with a new team. But with that, I just think that you just have to sit him this week to kind of see where he plays out. Okay, move on to the next game. It's Green Bay Packers versus the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are favored by 3 points, and it's over under a 46.5. The must starts for this game is Devontae Adams. You're playing Aaron Jones. You're playing Dalvin Cook. You're playing Adam Thielen. And for that, that's really the only guys that I'm going to plug in my lineup, definitely. I mean, those are the big names. You drafted them. You're putting them in your lineup. Now, when it comes to any flex options, I really don't have a flex option for this week. Now, I do have some boom bust players, and the boom bust players for this week for me are Allen Lazard, Kirk Cousins, and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I have Allen Lazard on my bench. I'm not playing him. I don't need to play him. But if you're in a league that's deep at wide receiver and you need somebody for some high upside, I think Allen Lazard is going to be the number 2 in Green Bay. I think that's a good option to have. And sometimes you win weeks based on just trusting that this guy is going to, emerge as the number 2 for Green Bay. I mean, we know what Aaron Rodgers is like with Devontae Adams. Now, Aaron Rodgers, for me, I'm not playing him. I want to see more of Aaron Rodgers on how he's going to be in this offense for the second year. Is he going to be good with MVS and Allen Lazard? Now, we know what Devontae Adams can do. We know what Aaron Jones can do. So I want to kind of see how Aaron Rodgers, I hope he bounces back this year. I really like Aaron Rodgers. He's fun to watch. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer, but right now, I'm not playing Aaron Rodgers until I see, that he's back to that elite status that we are known to see him, from the years past. Going on to the next game, the Dolphins versus the Patriots. Obviously, the Patriots are favored by 6.5 points. The over-under is 43.5. In this game, I really don't have a must start. There's no players in here that I think you need to start. My flex options, I think Edelman and James White are good flex options. I think that, we know what Edelman can do. He's good in PPR. James White is known to be a running back that's a good flex in PPR leagues. But we just don't know how that running back situation is going to play out. We know that Damian Harris is injured. Sony Michel's there. Rex Burkhead's there. So James White seems to be the constant guy that's always consistent. So I think you could play him in your flex. Now, my boom bust candidates, Cam Newton, we have no idea what he's going to be like with the Patriots. Tom Brady had a subpar, fancy year last year with less talent. So Cam Newton, I just don't know how he's going to do with the same talent or even less talent. So for me, I'm not playing Cam Newton, but I get it. If you're in a pinch, you need to play him, you can play him. Other candidates for the boom bust are Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, and Mike Gesicki. I just don't know how these guys are going to look all on the field at once. I know last year when they all were on the field at once, Preston Williams was the guy that was the go-to receiver. But the Patriots are a very good pass defense. I'm not sure if I want to play any of these guys. I may have to play Preston Williams in one of my leagues because we played 3 wide receivers in a flex. So he may be my guy that I have to just, see what happens. But I don't think, it's a bad choice. I think he is going to be the target leader for the Dolphins. But I have no idea who's going to be guarding him. So if he gets Stephon Gilmore, I think it's lights out for Preston Williams. But for my sits of the week for this game is Sony Michel, Matt Breida, and Jordan Howard. Like I said, the Patriots are a very good defense. We have no idea what the Dolphins' offense is going to look like this year on some of the things that they have going on over there. But Fitzpatrick, he could have some magic. He could be Fitzmagic again. But right now, I'm willing to wait and see how the Miami Dolphins offense plays out and kind of sit these guys until I feel more comfortable playing them. Now, the next game, the Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 8.5 points. The over-under is 48.5. Obviously, the must-starts in this game are OBJ, Nick Chubb, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Andrews. Your flex options are, I think Kareem Hunt's a good flex. Mark Ingram's a good flex. Jarvis Landry. And then the boom bust for this game, I think, Hollywood Brown and J.K. Dobbins are good players that could give you some really good upside. But, I don't know exactly, J.K. Dobbins was 4th on the depth chart this week. And then I have a hard time believing that they're not going to use him tomorrow or on Sunday. So I think that it's one of those things where if you have J.K. Dobbins and if you want to see what happens, you can plug him in there. But he's on my boom bust list for this week. And then my sit is Baker Mayfield, Austin Hooper, and David Njoku. Like, the Baltimore Ravens defense is legit. And right now, if you drafted Baker Mayfield, you probably draft him as your backup quarterback. I don't think you start him. You're going to start him, for this week. But if you have to start him, I mean, good luck with that. I don't know how he's going to do against that defense. But for now, I just have him as a sit. I do like Baker Mayfield overall this season, but for this particular game, I'm not going to play him if I have a better option at quarterback. Now, the next game, the Eagles versus the Washington football team. The Eagles are favored by 6 points. The over-under is 45.0. Your must-starts for this game are Carson Wentz. This one may change, but Miles Sanders is a must-start if he's playing. And then you got Zach Ertz as a must-start. In your flex, if you have Terry McLaurin, I would play Terry McLaurin. If you own Terry McLaurin, you're probably going to play him as your wide receiver too, and he's already in your starting lineup anyways. But unless you have a really deep roster at wide receiver, Terry McLaurin is going to be started every week. But the Eagles last year had a bad pass defense. I think that Terry McLaurin could have a really big game this week. And now my boom bust players, Antonio Gibson, like he is a guy that everyone's talking about. We have no idea how he's going to be used, but if you're looking for a guy that has a high upside, he's a guy that could get you a good week, but we just don't know. And now Boston Scott. The reason why I have Boston Scott here is because we don't know how Miles Sanders is going to be. He's limited with his hamstring. He did practice on Friday, but if he's injured and he can't go, or if he's limited, Boston Scott could get you a good fantasy game if you're in a PPR format. And obviously, like Dallas Goedert, he's a boom bust player for me. I just don't know how that's going to play out based on Zach Ertz. Now, if Zach Ertz gets most of the attention, then obviously Dallas Goedert makes a better option for you. But then you got Deshaun Jackson and then Jalen Reagor. Deshaun Jackson last year came out strong in the first week. Then he got injured. So I do think that just like Sammy Watkins or Mecole Hardman, some of these guys who can stretch the field out, it only takes one play for Deshaun Jackson to be fantasy relevant for this week. And he has the capability of doing that. He's going against the Washington team that doesn't have a great secondary. So it could be where Deshaun Jackson or Jalen Reagor could have 2 big games, this week because the Washington team is just so bad on defense. But we'll see. Going on the next game, we got Los Angeles Chargers versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Chargers are favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is 45. In this game, obviously the must-starts are Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon. I think Keenan Allen is a must-start. He's the number 1 receiver for them. And Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's a very talented tight end. I think he's a must-start for this week. My flex options for this game is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd's a really good number 2, and I think that with A.J. Brown coming back, I have him as my boom bust for this week. And this game is, because he has said this week, and I think he said it actually today, that his hamstring feels 100%. We haven't seen A.J. Brown healthy in a long time, so we have no idea how he is. We don't know how, where the talent is right now. We know he's talented, but we don't know if he's that elite talent that he once was. So A.J. Brown for me is a guy that I'm playing if I have to, but I will wait to see how he plays this week and how good he does, how much involvement he has in the offense until I feel comfortable playing him. And I'm sitting Joe Burrow. It's a rookie's first game, and the Chargers have a very good defense. It makes me nervous. I have to play him in my main league. He's my second quarterback. We play in a 2-quarterback league, so I have to play him. So I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but I think you should. If you're in a 1-quarterback league and you have Joe Burrow on your team, you're not starting him. That's just plain and simple. Now the next game is the Tampa Bay Bucs versus the New Orleans Saints. The Saints are favored by 5 points. The over/under is 49.5. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I think the Saints do win this game. But when it comes to the must starts, you're starting Drew Brees, you're starting Tom Brady, you're starting Alvin Kamara, you're starting Mike Thomas, Chris Godwin. And now with Mike Evans out, he's doubtful for Sunday. He's not going to play. So if you have him, put him on your bench. He's a sit for this week. I think this bumps up Gronk a little bit. I think that they need another person to rely on. If Mike Evans is not available, which he won't be, I think this helps Gronk. So if you have Gronk, I'll play him. Just because they need that big guy to kind of stretch the field. He's not going to obviously stretch the field like Mike Evans, but he is a specimen of a man, and he definitely can be a guy that you can rely on. So Gronk, I think, is an uptick for me. I think a good flex option is Latavius Murray. We've seen this offense with 2 running backs. When Mark Ingram was on the roster with Alvin Kamara, they both were players that you can play. And I think Latavius Murray still has that capability. My boom bust for this week for this game is Jared Cook, Ronald Jones, and Leonard Fournette, because I have no idea on how they're going to distribute the ball. Just like all the other games that I mentioned with the running back by committee, Leonard Fournette is a guy that I think should start. He's a better talent than Ronald Jones, but Ronald Jones has been on the team for 3 years. Ronald Jones has put in the work. I think that there's this is a very interesting game for me in the sense of like how they're going to play this out. But I think it's Ronald Jones starting title for now until Leonard Fournette gets him back into form, and I think Leonard Fournette takes over pretty much in October. But for me, if you have these guys, you're playing them, but just have low expectations when it comes to this game, when it comes to Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette. Now we're going to the Arizona Cardinals versus the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are favored by 8 points. It's over-under for 46. You're obviously going to start Kyler Murray. You're going to start DeAndre Hopkins, Kenyon Drake, George Kittle. You're going to flex Raheem Mostert. I think that, he is a guy that we know what he can do in a short, like a small sample size, but we have no idea what he's going to be like getting all the carries. I don't think he gets all the carries, but he's a guy that you can put in your flex. The boom bust players for this game, I think Christian Kirk, Chase Edmonds are those two. Also, Kendrick Bourne and Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel's not playing, so Kendrick Bourne seems like a very interesting name to plug in if you need to. And then Brandon Ayuk is the rookie that they drafted this year. He's been getting a lot of praise in the offseason and the training camp. So this is a guy that you may need to put in there just because you're running out of options based on injury. If you're one of those guys who are dealing with all these injured players, then he may be a guy that you have to trust, hoping for the best. And then you're sitting Jimmy G. I see no reason to play Jimmy G. He's a guy that I have ranked, out of my QB1 range, so I don't have him a guy that you have to play at all. But like to note this game, though, this is the game I was talking about earlier on in the podcast. This is the game that could be postponed, so pay attention because the air quality could get worse in San Francisco. So just please know that you need to pivot if you have to, but just pay attention to the news in this game. And then the Sunday night game, we got the Dallas Cowboys versus the Rams. The Cowboys are 2.5-point favorites. There's a 50-point over/under. Obviously, you're going to start Dak, Zeke, Robert Woods. I think Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee are all must-start players for this week. You drafted these guys as such, so play them. I think Michael Gallup is a good flex option. I think that if Amari Cooper gets Jalen Ramsey, Michael Gallup could have a good game, and obviously CD Lamb could have a good game. My boom bust, I have Van Jefferson. He's a guy that's been getting a lot of hype. If you've been watching Hard Knocks, he's been getting a lot of hype this offseason, and I think that he's a guy that he's kind of unknown right now. But Van Jefferson, if he is on tomorrow or on Sunday, he's going to be a guy that could possibly have a big game. And I know this is going to be hated on, but I have Amari Cooper as a boom bust. We know what he's like against inferior talent. He dominates inferior talent in corners. But when it comes to him going against Jalen Ramsey, who's a shutdown corner, I can see Amari Cooper having a bad game. And if you have him, obviously you drafted Amari Cooper to be your wide receiver 1 or possibly your wide receiver 2. I'm just nervous that you're not going to get much out of him, because if he gets Jalen Ramsey, it's over. And another guy that I think could have a boom-bust game is Blake Jarwin. He's been getting a lot of hype. He's had a good training camp. He's a very talented tight end. But you just don't know what you're going to get out of him because we haven't seen him. So he's another boom-bust player for me. And then Jared Goff, he's a sit for me. Like I said, he's a guy that has a lot of upside. He's definitely talented. We just don't know what he's going to look like, not having Todd Gurley, not having a full, preseason of games, just to kind of get things taken care of in the sense of just getting your timing down with your receivers. But I think, it's a guy that I'm willing to wait and see on how Jared Goff does until I want to plug him in my starting, quarterback position. Now going on to the Monday night games. The first game we have on Monday night is the Steelers versus the Giants. The Steelers are a 3-point favorite. It's over under of 48 points. I think the must starts, you have to start Big Ben. You're starting Juju, James Conner, obviously Saquon Barkley, and I think Evan Ingram's a must start. These are guys, like I said, you drafted as your top players, so you're going to play them. And I think for a flex, I think Sterling Shepard's a good flex option. I think he is the number 1 in New York. I think that they have a decent wide receiver group. They have Shepard, they have Slayton, they have Tate. But I think Sterling Shepard, it's more talented than all those guys. So I think that Sterling Shepard is a good flex play. For my boom bust category for this game, I have Deontay Johnson and Darius Slayton. And then my sit, I have Daniel Jones. Look, the Steelers are too good of a defense. I don't think Daniel Jones has a good game. I am nervous about Barkley and Ingram as well, but those are guys you have to play. You drafted them, so you have to play these guys. But I think this is gonna be a good game. I think that it's gonna be interesting to see what Daniel Jones looks like in year 2. That's a good storyline. Obviously, how does Big Ben look after having elbow surgery? How does Juju come and resurrect what he did last year, just based on having a bad season? And James Conner, is he healthy? I like James Conner a lot. I love him as a player, but I just hope that he can stay healthy this year. And then for the second Monday night game, we have the Tennessee Titans versus the Denver Broncos. It's an over-under of 41.5 points. I think the only must-starts you have in this game are Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown. We don't know about Courtland Sutton right now. He is injured. Possibility he doesn't play. But because this is a Monday night game, you have to pay attention to the injury report. If he doesn't play, you obviously have to have an option. Who's another guy you can grab on the Broncos? Who's another guy you can put into your lineup on the Titans? These are things you have to worry about because it's a Monday night game. So just pay attention. Courtland Sutton may not play, but have options. Be ready for that just in case. I think a good flex option right now is Melvin Gordon. I think Melvin Gordon right now is the lead back in Denver. I think that he's the most talented back. I think that he gets the bulk of the snaps for the Denver Broncos. But as my boom bust players, I have Noah Fant. I have Jared Jeudy as my boom bust because if Courtland Sutton cannot go, I think Jeudy has a decent game. I think he becomes the number 1. I think Jonnu Smith for the Titans, the Tennessee Titans tight end. He's a very athletic and great tight end. I think that this is going to be his coming out party in a sense of like this season, not this game in particularly, but I think Smith is going to have one of those seasons to kind of put him on the map as one of those better tight ends. And I think Phillip Lindsay's a boom bust because of Melvin Gordon. I think that obviously Phillip Lindsay got drafted, but we don't know what the workload is going to be like. It's another running back by committee type situation where Lindsay could have a great game. He could get the goal line work. He could get a touchdown. He could salvage your team for the week if you start him. But he's a guy that we're not sure of how they're going to use him. And you're going to sit Ryan Tannehill and you're going to sit Drew Lock. I just don't think these guys right now, Denver has a very good defense. I know they lost Von Miller, but Ryan Tannehill, I love him as a player. I would love to have him on my team, but I think there's better option for you if you need a quarterback for this week. So, that's it. Those are all the matchups. Those are all my opinions on who you should start and sit and whatnot. So, if you have any questions, please email me. My email is chip@gridironfantasyfootball.com. So if you really want to email me any of your sit questions, please email me. I'll try to get to as many as I can. But thank you so much for listening today. Please like, comment, and share on this podcast and YouTube video. Now on my next podcast, I'll be recapping the Week 1 games. I will be doing all my studs and duds for the Week 1. But it's awesome. We get a full slate of games this Sunday, and I cannot wait. So don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss that episode. And you can find us over on social media at the Gridiron Pod on Facebook and Twitter. And on Instagram, you can find us at Gridiron Fantasy Football. So now this is the time of the year where the schedule changed on my podcast. So on Mondays, I'll be releasing my Week 1 my weekly recaps. On Tuesdays, it'll be the Waiver Wire show. And on Thursdays will be my weekly matchups. And then Saturday, so tomorrow, I didn't talk much about injuries today in the podcast, but on Saturdays, I will be releasing my weekly injury updates, just because I think that's very important. And plus, I'll try to give more in-depth information about the injuries in general, but that'll be dropping on Saturday. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.